Thank you all for coming. As you all know, we have a departmental honors program here in the Department of Exercise and Nutrition Science, which requires students to complete a primary research project under the mentorship of the faculty mentoring team. And Lily is here today to defend that. After she does that, she will graduate designated with honors for departmental honors. So thank you to Gabby, her primary mentor, and Dr. Sachek, well, Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Sachek. Sorry about that. For mentoring Lily, and I'm going to give Dr. Hedrick the opportunity to do the formal introduction and go just sit back here. So.
Thank you, Dr. Romer. All right, hi everyone. I'm just gonna sit because this is a funky room to stand in, but we'll let Lily do that for the next 20 minutes. Thank you all for coming and supporting Lily today. Lily is originally from Norwell, Massachusetts, and has been a student at GW within the University Honors Program, and she is graduating this month. This is a big culminating moment for our dear Lily. She is going to be graduating with her Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition with a pre-medical concentration. Lily has had a really successful time here at GW working on both NOURISH GW, which she'll be presenting on today. She's also been a key member on the FRESH project under the mentorship of Dr. Sachek. And beyond her research experience, Lily has also been an incredible peer mentor across different programs here at GW. Once Lily is all wrapped up with her degree, she's going to keep working with us on NOURISH GW, and she'll also be preparing to be applying for medical school. It's been a delight working with Lily. I'm a very reflective person, and I was just thinking last night, and it was 10 years ago that I started working with a PhD student, Sarah Amin, when I was an undergrad, as an undergrad research assistant, and that's when I really found my love for research. So I just can't wait to see where you are 10 years from now, Lily.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hedrick, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm really excited to be presenting my senior thesis that is about exploring the link between food insecurity and self-perceived physical and mental health outcomes among college students at the George Washington University. Today, we'll be walking through my motivation for studying this and a bit of background. Then I'll go into research aims, the methods, the results, and finally conclusions and implications. So when I first started here at GW, I came in as an undeclared student in the University Honors Program. Now at the time I knew that meant I would be writing a thesis my senior year, but it wasn't until last year when I learned about the opportunity to present my thesis for departmental honors in the Exercise and Nutrition Science Department too. So while that meant I was taking on a little bit more of a challenge, this experience has led me to become more proficient in coming up with research questions, conducting data analysis, and practicing scientific writing. With that being said, I hope to tie all of these experiences into my future career in medicine. So before we dive in, let's talk about what food insecurity is. The USDA defines it as the inability to acquire or access an adequate, safe, and culturally preferred diet in socially acceptable ways. And research shows a wide range of prevalence in food insecurity among college students, ranging from 15 to 40%. Now, this emphasizes how food insecurity may influence the way college students carry throughout their college experience, reporting negative impacts on self-perceived health, academic performance, and success beyond graduation. Multiple factors are at play here when we talk about food insecurity. So we have economic factors such as the cost, ever-increasing cost of education, students who are on financial aid, students who are also on Pell Grants, and we see higher risk among those students who work more than 20 hours a week. We also see increases in risk among those who have previous SNAP status, so Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And then moving on from economic, we see risk factors associated with geographic location. So the cost of living may be different, especially in urban populations. We see an increased cost of living, exacerbating this experience of food insecurity. Transportation differences and insufficient resources, such as access to food pantries. And then there are social factors too that play into food insecurity risk, including gender identity, race, ethnicity, first generation status, international students, to name a few. So in 2021, the National College Health Assessment found that 56% of GW students were reporting marginal or high food insecurity. Now that statistic provides an alarming note to us at GW, and we wanted to investigate further. We wanted to understand, well, what exactly is going on here with students across different characteristics in the student body, and how is this experience of food insecurity impacting their ability to thrive as GW students. So that's where Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Saicha came in, and they started developing the NOURISH GW study, which stands for Nourishing Opportunity and Understanding Resources to Improve Student Hunger. This study is in collaboration with the Division for Student Affairs, and we are looking not only at quantitative experiences of food insecurity across the student body, but also qualitatively looking at their coping mechanisms and ways there are different experiences of food insecurity. And that's where the STORC is in collaboration with us to better understand these relationships. Okay. Sorry. I have to. Not sure about this. Okay. So moving on to my research aims, my thesis is a smaller portion to the large NOURISH study. I specifically wanted to address, well, how do the characteristics of the GW student body differ by food security status? And then I wanted to look at the outcomes of what is the association between food insecurity and self-perceived physical health, as well as mental health among GW students. Are you just gonna, okay. So moving on to the methods. The study design for NOURISH, particularly with this quantitative portion, was a longitudinal survey that was administered across 2 time points so far in September and October 2024. We will also be administering the survey again in December to address more to understand the experience across the whole semester. But for the purposes of my data analysis, I used the September and October data points. We recruited participants across GW's campus through tabling, emailing, and flyering as well. And this allowed us to capture a convenient sample. So once we collected our data, we were able to establish 3 different statuses of food security. Those students who reported food security at both time points were classified into the persistently food secure category. Those who were food insecure at both September and October time points were categorized into the persistently food insecure category. And then students who reported food insecurity at either September or October fell into the episodically food insecure category, experiencing it only at one time point. So throughout the survey, validated questionnaires were utilized. First, to establish the status of food security, we used the 6-item short form from the US Household Food Security module. And then to look at the outcomes, physical health was addressed by the CDC's Healthy Days Core module. First question about general self-perceived health. And then depression was addressed by the PHQ-2, the Patient Health Questionnaire 2-item, and anxiety was assessed by the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 2-item questionnaire in the survey. Of note, the data that we collected was then analyzed for descriptive statistics, and this will be better explained in the next slide. With the study sample, we first gathered 593 students who started the survey in September, meaning they opened it and entered their email. Then after September 24, we realized that 422 students completed the survey in full. Then at the next time point, it was sent out to any student who had opened and started the survey. So we gathered 279 students who started the second survey, 260 of them completing it in full. And then to get the analytical sample, we wanted to see the students who completed the survey at both time points. And that came to 205 students. And as mentioned, this is a convenience sample that was then descriptively analyzed with chi-square test and chi-square test for categorical variables and ANOVA test for continuous variables. Moving on to the results. The distribution of food security status among GW students is on the higher end with what we originally talked about with prior literature. So 60.5% of students were persistently food secure, while the remaining 39.5% were food insecure, and the majority being persistently food insecure, so across both time points. As I move into the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about some of the relationships between food insecurity and the characteristics and outcomes. And this darker color will be representing the persistently food secure category. And as we move lighter, persistently food insecure will be the medium blue, and episodically food insecure will be the light blue. Okay, so first, talking about the characteristics of the student body, we see that the experience of persistent food insecurity is more prevalent among non-white students at GW. So of note, these differences that we are seeing among race and ethnicity are representing the larger systemic disadvantages and socioeconomic inequalities that we know stem from historical and present day disinvestments in communities of color. Students on financial aid were also found to experience persistent food insecurity at higher rates than their peers. And we can see this jump in 20% from those who do not receive financial aid to those who do. And I wanted to address this dining plan enrollment statistic because we did not find any statistical difference between the two categories across food security status, but previous research indicates that students who live off campus are less likely to be enrolled in these dining plans, and that may further exacerbate the risk for food insecurity. So this warrants further research of how the dining plans are impacting students at GW and their food needs. So now I'm going to be moving on to the outcomes of food insecurity that we study that I have here. So first, physical health. Students perceive their physical health to be worse when they are experiencing persistent food insecurity. And we can see this between the excellent and very good category. There's 10% of students perceiving their health to be excellent or very good experience that persistent food insecurity versus those who are reporting fair or poor physical health, there's nearly 40% more students reporting persistent food insecurity. So now for the mental health outcomes, the experience of depression is more common among GW students who are persistently food insecure. And we see across all of these outcomes, we see very mixed results with the episodic food insecurity status. So the significance here is showing the difference between persistent food insecurity with those without depression and those presenting with depression. And anxiety for mental health outcomes sparked an alarming concern, as a third of the students answering the survey reported that they experienced anxiety at some point. And so that makes us wonder, okay, anxiety is prevalent across the student population at GW. But we can see that experiencing persistent food security may reduce the risk. So now for conclusions and implications, we can summarize what I just discussed. So nearly 40% of GW students are experiencing food insecurity, whether that is persistent or episodic throughout the semester, majority being persistent. And we discussed how characteristics of the student body play a role in food security status. We saw that those students on financial aid and students and non-white students are more at risk for persistent food insecurity, maybe more at risk for food insecurity. And we did not see any statistical difference with dining plan enrollment. Now for the outcomes, again, we saw that the experience of persistent food insecurity was associated with lower physical health, so those reporting fair or poor health, and the experience of persistent food insecurity, again, was associated with worse mental health outcomes, such as depression and anxiety. And the episodic food insecurity results were mixed. So with that being said, we need to do something about it. So from a GW level, we can increase awareness of the resources existing here, such as the food pantry, the store, and the GW Swipes Out Hunger program. But we also need to evaluate these existing support systems and how students are utilizing them. So especially with the dining plans, are our dining plans a protective factor for preventing the experience of food insecurity? And then on a larger scale, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is something that could help mitigate the experience of food insecurity among college students, but currently the eligibility criteria is highly restrictive. So we can look into that on a more policy level. Okay, and so what's next for research? Because let's keep this going. With Nourish, with Nourish, there's more to it. We're collecting that third data point, and at that point, we will have a better understanding of the food security status across a full semester, and we will be able to perform multivariable regression analysis that will strengthen those results and provide more information on the directionality. The next phase of Nourish also includes qualitative interviews, so where we will be addressing or assessing how students are coping with the experience of food insecurity, how the students who are food secure managing their food needs as well. And then we will look more closely into the store and how the store is being a resource for our GW population. And then future studies may consider more comprehensive measures, like objective measures for physical health, including anthropometric measurements such as body composition. We may also want to look into the expanded PHQs and the GAD for mental health assessment, because there are 9-item versions of those as well. And then future studies may design a long-term cohort where we follow students beyond their college experience and see what sort of health implications are at play after college in relation to the experience of food insecurity. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of the organizations and individuals that helped me get to this point. For this study in particular, the Global Food Institute, thank you so much for funding this project with Nourish, and the Presidential Scholarship that the University Honors Program provides allows me to be here at GW. Thank you again to the Division for Student Affairs for partnering with us to get this information out to students. And huge thank you to Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Sachek and Dr. Barbario, who helped me stay on track with this project and get to this point. I couldn't have collected all of this data in the short period of time without the Nourish research assistant team. So thank you to all of those who helped with data collection there. And in essence, thank you to all my friends and family watching, and my parents who helped me get to this point. I couldn't be here without everyone supporting me along the way, and all of my advisors helping me come up with this thesis project and pursue my career and academic goals here at GW and beyond. So here's a glimpse of my college experience and all of the many things that I was involved in, and very grateful to have the opportunity to be involved in. Yeah. Okay. Hi.
Hi, so I'm not familiar with GW's meal plan and how that works. And I'm very interested in that December time point, so I think it's awesome that that's getting collected, because I can remember my undergrad. But is there something about the way that GW's meal plan is set up that is not protective against food insecurity? That any kind of reason you would think that even though they're on the meal plan, they're still experiencing this?
Right, so GW offers a varied option set list for their dining plans. Some are very limited, meaning you only have, I think there's a block 90 of swipes, so 90 swipes for the semester, and then they also go up to unlimited plans. And we asked those questions in the survey, but when we were doing the data analysis, we collapsed all of those together. So I think it would be more interesting to see how might be a difference between the different levels of dining plans, and if the GW dining program can then say, okay, you know what, students who are on this dining plan, their food needs were not met, so maybe that's something we shouldn't offer. And I think at the end of the semester, we may see more data on the GW Swipes Out Hunger program, which distributes leftover swipes from other students and back to those who have run out.
Awesome.
So we're interested to see if that program is being utilized by students and if it's mitigating any experience of food insecurity at that last time point.
Yeah, that would be great. And for that lower tier plans, maybe it just needs an asterisk to say this may not be sufficient, or you need supplemental food access. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great job, Lily. That was excellent, and just exciting research that's going on. I'm curious about the sample of students, like how reflective of that is that of like the GW student population, and like are there groups that you think are like missing from that sample, and how might that affect your findings?
Thank you for asking. So the sample population covered students from all levels, all levels of undergraduate years, and also graduate, including master's and doctoral students. There were, from the gender identity, we saw a higher response rate among female students. So that's something to consider there. When we talked about race and ethnicity, we did have to collapse some identities into a other category. And I think if we had a larger sample size, we would have been able to assess the differences among that distribution a little bit better. So there is some selection bias with the sample size that we had, especially as we were conducting the recruitment out on campus and running into certain students where we were recruiting and where we weren't. So I do think that that is a limitation that can be addressed with a larger sample size.
Do you want to mention how most of the sample was garnered though, beyond recruiting? I don't know if you articulated that specifically.
Yeah, so with the listserv kind of.
Yeah,
incentive.
that is a
Yeah.
rare, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we did collect a list of almost 2,000 students from
Kim Dam.
Kim Dam, thank you to her for supplying that list to try to get a more random sample. However, the response rate on that wasn't as high as we had hoped.
Mhm.
So there would be more robust efforts to increase that response rate.
We knew too from past studies that have been done on other college campuses and similar in size to GW that we probably struggle with response
Sure.
rate. So we just
Yeah.
hit the ground running.
Yeah.
It was still a gift to get like a random
Yeah.
sample.
Oh, totally.
Relative to us.
I know.
Works out to befriend the division for students.
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Could you, what does GW currently do to understand the actual food insecurity problem on campus and the specific students that are experiencing food insecurity? My understanding with the store is that it's the student, I believe, has to reach out or be recommended or through some intervention, whether it's care, et cetera. So what does GW do to sort of understand its own problem?
Yeah, so with the store, it is a student-run food pantry that is located in the basement of District House. So students are able to access that, and it has sort of an anonymous factor where it's kind of hidden. So students have to go seek that out themselves. And there are pros and cons to its location. Students are protected, meaning they're not as exposed to their peers when they're going to see the store. But on the other hand, the students that may actually need it a little bit more or need it as well are not aware of this resource. So with that being said, the store does collect data on who's coming, how many students are coming and what they're getting. And the Division for Student Affairs is doing work to better understand that resource. And then I mentioned the GW Swipes Out Hunger program, where they distribute leftover swipes to students who have run out. That program is starting to be up and running right now for the end of the semester. Beyond that, there is the National College Health Assessment that gives us that data every 2 years. But that's where NOURISH came in to understand a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, the reason I asked, just listening to like my wife talk about it, like now every kid that shows up at the ER is screened for food insecurity these days. So I'm just curious, like why something like that can't happen on a college campus, especially when kids are living in dorms, et cetera. Like, so I'm just, very curious if GW would show any interest in
Doing that.
proactively screening for this.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think about the first year orientation, and making sure that we're emphasizing the resources available to students in that first year orientation. And that is something else that could be screened for before students come onto campus. Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, a great job. It's collecting data on 200 people, as you know, from the fresh study. It's really difficult. This is great start. Actually, Christy stole one of my questions, but the other question I had, because that national survey, I think you said was done in 2022 or one, so that was pre-date dining hall back on campus.
Yes, yes.
So I wonder, because a couple things have changed since then, Whole Foods being pulled off, G World availability. I guess my question is, have you looked at or do you stratify, or maybe I missed it, if living situation plays a role, meaning off campus versus on campus? Obviously dining hall plans, I think probably do, but just curious if you had any perception on that, living here for, a little bit of time. Do you think that there's any difference between people living on versus off campus and food insecurity?
Yeah, I think that was what I gathered from prior research. Those who are off campus are at an increased risk for food insecurity. However, our statistical analysis did not reveal a significant relationship between housing type and food security status. And the numbers of the spread in the data was very similar. There was about equal amounts of students living on campus that reported to the survey and living off campus. It was like near a little bit less than 100 per category. So I'm interested in seeing like why that might be. And I think the change in dining plan does potentially make a difference, because maybe that's saying that the students who are living on campus, they're still getting that dining plan, but maybe the dining plan isn't meeting their food needs. And same for, there's risk across the off-campus students, but maybe they're, instead of paying for the dining plan, they're budgeting their money to go to Trader Joe's instead, and able to meet their food needs that way. So I think there's certain risks associated with both groups, and that result might be unique to GW's campus, especially given our geographical location in the city with various dining options, and limited access to a supermarket even too. Something to look
Well,
into.
it's being able to cook off campus. They can cook, like, but if you're in a dorm and you run out of swipes and you only have like a mini fridge, or maybe access, like, you are having been through that.
Of course.
I mean, your food needs are more constrained, or meeting your food needs may potentially because you're on. I mean, I'm just thinking they could be living on campus that seem more protected, but they might not have the full resources then to actually. They did plan, we live off campus, you're gonna potentially cook and have to plan for purchasing, whereas on campus,
You have more control over your cost of living.
Yeah, exactly,
We were
yeah.
talking about that like casually, about
Yeah,
they're so limited, like.
students are not ready
Student housing
to,
is
like all of a sudden I'm on the
GW.
cliff, I'm like, I don't have any swipes, what do I do? I don't, and I'm not, my mental resources are not in place for navigating this, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have
Sorry.
a comment after too.
First of all, great job. Just had a question. If you analyze the dining plan and then you're trying to see like the different dietary restrictions of students, so for example, if they're kosher, vegetarian, vegan, dairy-free, whatever, and I know the school is actively trying to include or help people meet those goals and feel comfortable to eat there, but do you think that would impact food insecurity at all? Because I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with the way that they handle cross-contamination.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Here we can go forward.
Backup data.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great point. One more. We can see that dietary restrictions were also assessed, and we broke this down by all of the things you were talking about. But when we had to do the analysis, we collapsed them to restrictions versus no restrictions, and we did not find a statistical significant difference by food security status. With that being said, again, smaller sample size. Maybe if we had a larger one, we could look more into that. But I I absolutely agree with the conversations that are happening among students. And a lot of students in the past have tried to opt out of the dining plan because they're not meeting their restrictive needs. Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to note on the dining situation on campus. My friends may remember that I lived on Vern as part of being in the honors program my freshman year, and I was fortunate enough to have that dining hall at Pelham Commons. Meanwhile, my peers living on Foggy Bottom did not have a dining hall, and we definitely saw differences in our food experiences. Oftentimes, my friend would come over to the Vern, despite people not loving it there. They would come over to the Vern to have a dining hall meal. And I think it's a big conversation now that GW has been implementing these dining halls into the Foggy Bottom campus. And I think looking at the 2021 data to now, it definitely warrants further investigation.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Go for it. Nothing stupid.
Grad students have access to the dining plan?
If they want it.
They want it, I would
opted for
assume so, but like in my mind, it's always undergrad only, right? So do we don't know how many grads.
Have the meal plan if you.
I know,
It's-
I would make my, I would have made my whole life easier, all these years. So can we, do we look at it like by grad under, like in terms of what percentage of grads are actually doing dining plan? Have we?
We haven't.
No, yeah, just because it was the undergrad, which we didn't really talk about experience in here, and kind of drilling down that, I mean, obviously, we came against the wall in terms of just getting this data.
They
Yeah.
get paid for that, right?
Yeah.
So I think with that comment, students living on campus have historically been required
Right, exactly.
have a dining plan, like.
And there's
and
no
it's
grad
undergrad.
students that are required to live on campus, even if they, I mean,
There's no.
they would like to, they can't, yeah.
No,
There's
I
no
don't think
housing.
we have grad housing.
Yeah, what's that?
I don't think.
No, we
have
don't,
housing.
we don't, yeah.
Which international students.
That's why I was wondering about the dining plans being open to the grad students, since they're fundamentally isn't grad housing or kind of start, so.
Yeah, and I think on that point, historically, GW required up to junior year through your first 3 years, you need to live on campus. But over the past year or so, they've taken that back to 2 years. And I think that kind of highlights the housing shortage on the urban landscape. And we can see that housing security has a significant influence on food security status too. So
But it's tiny, like, because like we only know how five
Five.
say they lack.
right, so
I mean, five too
Further.
many, but.
yeah.
I mean, something to note there is also that GW housing is extremely expensive and
Mhm.
oftentimes people will move off campus because it's still cheaper.
Yeah.
Even in DC or people will move further away and then commute because that's a more pragmatic option. The other thing there is with things like the dining hall plans and just housing on campus in general, over breaks, students don't have the option to stay often unless they go to extreme lengths to try and fight for that. So I think like December would be interesting. So I'm curious to see like if people don't really have strong resources at home or a good place to go to during the breaks, how that would impact their food security. I was also gonna ask, I don't know if you guys looked at this, but was there a single most notable factor or like component that contributed to people having food insecurity? Was it like not having adequate access to food, period? Was it not having food that met their needs?
Among the survey questions.
Yeah, like
Like
if
looking at the
somebody's like,
6 items.
yeah,
We can
exactly.
look at that, I don't
So
have
the
the,
questions weren't framed, I mean, the analysis wasn't framed
Yeah.
that
Right,
way.
yeah, that's okay.
yeah, so when we did the data analysis, we tied all of the 6 questions together, and then any student who reported a score of 3 or above on this 6 item short form were grouped into,
One.
it was 2 to
Two or
6,
more,
2 to
yeah.
6, it was 2 to 6. Yeah, those who reported scored from 2 to 6, 6 being max, were grouped into the food insecure category. So we did not break it down by item.
I'm just curious, 'cause I
That's
think
interesting.
food behaviors are gonna be different, like I know some people with dining halls, if they know they only have their 90 swipes, they're gonna swipe and like, it's classic, like people bring containers and like, I'm
yeah.
gonna take this pizza and shove it in. It's like, I think like maybe something like question 3 wouldn't be as applicable there. Because maybe they didn't eat as much for that specific meal, but it's like, oh, well, no, I got a lot of food, so like, I guess, like just trying to think about how dining halls might change the way these questions are appropriately targeted.
That's a great question. I think like with further analysis, we can make more associations with the student body characteristics and the experience of insecurity and taking into account compounding variables too with that regression analysis. Good.
Yeah, anyone online with questions? I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then they'll laugh.
Yeah, everyone's still here. Grandpa Joe is.
Any questions from the online crew?
Oh, there's your mom.
Oh. Mama Christie.
Lily, get in front of the camera and say hi to your mom.
I haven't been able to actually see you. Okay, there you are. Great job.
Thanks.
So proud of you.
Thank you
Nice
so much
job,
for.
Lily.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. It's so nice to hear your voice.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone who joined in. Thank you so much.
Great.
Cool.
Very proud of you.
Thanks, Mom. Appreciate it.
Gonna have a cookie
Oh,
now.
there's Cookie.
Oh, is your grandfather.